for me to be successful, I need to deeply understand how people work and how they're going to thrive and, where they might get stuck and the type of support that they might need. And I also need to deeply understand like how an organization works. And do they meet each other?
Hi, I'm Dave Weich, and you're listening to Work-Shaped Life. I met Katie Silver 10 or 12 years ago. I don't actually remember exactly how or where or when, but I remember a great conversation. The kind you have with someone you've known for a long time, not someone you met 10 minutes ago. In part, I'm sure this is because Katie's from Watertown, Massachusetts. I grew up in Framingham. We might have even graduated high school the same year. Two massholes in exile who'd found our way separately to the West Coast. And so, over the years, we've kept in touch in a very modern, social media-driven kind of way. I see updates from her occasionally. I assume or hope she sees mine. Neither one of us posts much, though. So it's always nice when she comes up in my feed. When we started this series, I immediately thought of Katie. She works in the field of work. She's an executive recruiter who helps connect job seekers to companies in need of talent. Hers seemed like a perspective worth hearing, given the podcast subject matter and the state of the economy in 2026. Katie, tell me about your job.
Hi, Dave. Thanks.
Sure.
So I'm a recruiter. So I work in recruiting and hiring, and I mainly work with companies and teams that are growing or maybe a little stuck, and need to find people for important positions within their companies. I help them find great people. And then I work with lots of job seekers, lots and lots these days, who are trying to find their next adventure. And I, through asking tons of questions and getting to know them, try to understand what makes them tick and what they're great at and what's going to be fulfilling. And then I make matches between these companies and these wonderful people and, hope that everything works out well.
And why is this your job? How did you find this career?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think a lot of recruiters will tell you this. I sort of fell into it, but I've always been a little bit of a matchmaker. Like I'm dating myself, but if I think back to, high school, I was like the master of the three-way calling, would think about who else needs to do this call or who should, when the junior highs come together, who should meet each other and who on one sports team should know somebody. Another. So I've just always sort of been that way. I'm a huge introvert. I don't like being the center of attention, but I love connecting people, and I'm really curious about people. And I think just like magical things can happen when you get the right people together, and that happens in relationships, and it also happens, of course, in the workplace. So I was in sales for a really long time, and I think that's also very much matchmaking. And landed a job doing sales at a recruiting agency, a creative recruiting agency. That's where you and I met.
Uh-huh.
And got to know some wonderful recruiters through that work and really loved what they did and felt like it was very much an extension of what I sort of just did in my life. The sales skills were really helpful. And, shifting from sales to recruiting, I got to focus a little bit more on um, the people side of things than like closing a deal.
Yeah.
Though I still do
And
that all the time. I'm still always closing deals. Yeah.
when you say that, what does that mean in your context? Does it mean there's a company that needs a position filled and you are sort of closing the deal in the sense of finding the right person for that position? Or is it something different?
It's that and so it's closing a deal with both a company and a candidate. So what that might look like is if a company is trying to hire for a very specific role. Like I do a lot of recruiting for computer scientists. These people are all employed. They're very hard to find. I have to sort of sell them on the idea of this company that I'm supporting and what's great about them and why they might want to leave their current position to step into the unknown.
Yeah.
And then at the same time with the on the company side, I might meet a candidate who on paper doesn't check all of the boxes for the role that they're hiring for, but I know they're going to be incredibly successful and I know that they are going to be an amazing hire for that organization. And so I have to sort of sell, I'm air quoting, the hiring managers and the leadership team on why they should take a chance on someone.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh, what are the kinds of things that you've learned about what makes a good match in that sense?
Oh, that's a big question. There are a couple of things, like, from a tactical standpoint, there needs to be sort of the fundamental match between the thing the company is trying to accomplish in the role that they're hiring for, and the things that the person knows how to do. So, as, like, a very specific example, company is hiring an accountant, the candidate needs to know how to do accounting, right? So there's
Yeah.
just like fundamental, they need the skill sets. But I think like the basic fundamental skill set for the role. And at the level that the company needs them to step into. But beyond that, there's like this matchmaking that's about sort of way of working, alignment with ethos and values, the pace at which the company runs and the pace at which the candidate wants to run, levels of curiosity, levels of, again, like just kind of how we work and how the organization works. And that part is the most interesting and the most complex, right? So I've learned that you need to, like, for me to be successful, I need to deeply understand how people work and how they're gonna thrive and, where they might get stuck and the type of support that they might need. And I also need to deeply understand, like, how an organization works. And do they meet each other?
Right.
Yeah.
So, are you working then typically? Do you have long-term relationships with the organization,
Yeah.
and what is that sort of longitudinal or whatnot relationship with the client like? Or might you have you worked with the same person to put in three different positions over a period of 10 years?
Yeah, yep, yes, and that's I love that. I mean, I have some clients who I work with who I just met them, I'm trying to help them figure something out quickly, and then maybe we don't work together again for a few years, but my favorite, relationships, and I have many of these, are companies who I am sort of an extension of their team, right? So,
Hmm.
um, a good example of that is I work with a local computer science R&D firm. I've worked with them for 8 years. I know everything about them. I know how they operate. I know what it takes to be successful there. I know the type of work that they want to do. And so as I'm meeting people, especially who do sort of similar work to what they do, like I'm always thinking about them and who could be their next great hire, even if they don't have an open position, if that makes sense. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I have long-term relationships with quite a few clients across a number of different industries, and I'm sort of constantly thinking about how do I build a pipeline of people for them, so that when they're ready to make a hire, or even when they're not ready, but they're coming close to, I have a whole group of people who could be great for them.
Yeah.
And I
And
hang
you do that.
out a lot. I'm in person with them all the time. I know about we all know about each other's lives and families and all the things. Yeah.
Which is interesting because, okay, so what I was going to say is you do this independently. I mean, you have a business, but it's not as if you are embedded in the company. You're not an employee of the company for whom you are recruiting.
No, but I am employed. I mean, I'm not employed, but I kind of think this is just my point of view, but I think to be successful, you do sort of have to embed yourself. So I'm not an employee. I don't get paid to spend time with these people. I get paid, frankly, if I help them, if it's a successful hire. But I'm better at my job if I spend a lot of time with them and if I really do
Yeah.
get to know the team and the business. And yeah.
What is your sort of, for lack of a better phrase, work life balance in that sense? Like it seems like now. be mostly manageable. I imagine there are sort of fires you need to deal with at any given point because there's an emergency or there's something that but generally speaking, that seems like it wouldn't be a bad situation.
It's not. It's as I have as much balance as I enforce in my own life, right? Like you could there's no shortage of I mean on the job seeker side, there's no shortage of people who need help, particularly in today's market. So this weekday we're talking on a Friday, mid-morning or late morning. I've talked to 58 people this week.
Wow.
So so s
58 job seekers.
mhm, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, there's never a shortage of work to be done in helping candidates, and there's never a shortage of work to be done in helping my clients think about what they might need to hire for next. But I work for myself, so I can turn that on and off. And, sometimes I get calls really early in the morning. Sometimes I get calls on the weekends for something that is like a fire drill. But that's pretty rare. So the and sometimes I work really long hours, but honestly, like, that's usually my choice because I'm trying to help more people.
You must feel at times like, man, this person's really in a bind. I want to help. Like,
Yeah.
there's only so much you can do. And yet at the same time, it's got to be really gratifying to get someone the position that they want after they've been unemployed or just really unhappy at their job for a while.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every conversation I have well, maybe not every, but most, and this is the reason I love the work, is I can contribute something to helping people get unstuck. Something. Like, maybe it's that I do help them find that great new job or the great next company, or for, on the client side, maybe I help the team find their next great hire, and it means that the rest of their team is not working 80 hours a week, right? Like, they're finding more
Mhm.
balance. Sometimes getting unstuck just means, like, helping people think about how to approach their job search differently or consider industries that they maybe haven't looked at before or, like, even just fix something on their LinkedIn, right? So it's like, I'm really lucky in that way in that, the vast majority of work that I do feel like I can say I have helped someone in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are common things? Do you see like a top three kind of thing, or even just like one or two things that come to mind of like this helps people. People never think about or they don't adequately consider how important such and such, like you mentioned, some small thing on their LinkedIn. What are some of the very baseline pieces that people might often overlook?
Yeah, as job seekers, I think the biggest is the power of your network and building a network, and I think there's, an, like a preconceived notion or an assumption that you have to be some sort of a big extrovert, huge outgoing person to have a huge network. I think for a lot of people, I'm a good example of that not being the case. I mean, I would, like, sit home and watch Netflix all day, every day. I'm not I'm not a hugely extroverted person, but I have a huge network because I'm curious and I build my network through connecting with people that I'm, like, actually wanna learn about. And so I think helping people see that your network is really, really important in helping you find your next job, the right next adventure, growing, your career in the way that you want to, but it doesn't have to be like a weird salesy thing. It can be just connecting with people who you're curious about anyway, like, you're curious about the industry that they work in or the company they work for, they posted something that piques your interest, so sort of helping people dedicate time to that, and recognize that it doesn't have to be like this hugely intimidating thing. So I think people make mistakes in not giving enough time to their network, and instead just sending out a million applications.
Mhm.
Um, I think the other place where people sometimes get stuck is being really like understanding the state of today's market. So I think a lot of people spend a lot of time applying for jobs that they think they could be qualified for, or they think their skills are translatable. And in time, like that is something that can be a really great strategy when it's a candidates market, which means that there's more jobs than there are candidates. But right now, that's not the case. And so I think people make
Yeah.
a mistake casting a really wide net. And right now, you have to be pretty laser focused on a job that you could be successful at tomorrow, even if it's a lily pad job to your, like, longer term goal.
Hmm. What do you find in that sense? I'm curious about that concept of a lily pad job. Do you find that people are reluctant? What is the sort of flexibility in a typical candidate? Is it just related to I've been out of work for a year and a half and therefore I'll take anything? Or is it really just more of a kind of like constitutional person to person different way of thinking about work?
Both, probably. Yep.
Yeah,
I think after about there's a tipping point after about 6 months of being without work where people start to say, "I'm open to anything. I'll take a
yeah,
contract. I'll take" "I will do something that is a lower salary." That happens. When people are newer in their job search, they tend to focus on all of the things that they don't like about their current company and, like, not having those things, right? So, like,
sure.
their list that informs their next opportunity is much more about, "Here are the things I don't want," versus, "Here are the things I do want." So it might be, "I don't wanna go into an office. I don't wanna make less than X amount of money. I don't want a boss that's micromanaging." Like, it's just a laundry list of things that they don't want. And then
Yeah.
after a certain point, uh, that shifts, and they start to sort of become a little bit more open to, like, the art of the possible. Okay, well, maybe I could make a little less money. Maybe I could go into an office 2 days a week. Um,
Right.
you know, maybe I don't have to lead a team for now, and I'll get back to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find okay, so I'm in my mid 50s and um I've been really blessed that I'm running this company for 16 years and I'm
Mhm.
not looking for work. And so,
Yeah.
I feel really fortunate that way. I mean, I'm always looking for clients. It's not as
Yeah.
if I'm just like lazing around on the couch. Um, but that said, like, I think there's a point, and I don't know if you've seen this because I don't know, I guess, is there a typical age range that you specialize in or that you just find most people? Because I assume not everyone talks to a recruiter. So, I guess to set up this question, are you typically dealing with, a segment of the population, or is it really all over the place?
Well, it's all over the place as of, like, lately, 'cause I get a lot of people sent my way. But broadly speaking, I work with people who are mid to senior leaders. So most of the time I'm working with people who have been working for 15 years or more,
Yeah.
and have held positions of influence, whether that be like in a people leader role or just kind of as an individual contributor who had a lot of responsibility. They're usually making more than 6 figures. Um, so yeah,
You get to a certain point where you're accustomed to making a certain amount of
yeah,
money, and you're accustomed to a certain amount of either autonomy or kind of reward, in whatever form you might value. And the idea of going sideways, I think a lot of people are open to, but
mhm,
not the idea of going backwards. And certainly not the idea of like starting over in a different track.
yeah, yeah.
And is that reasonable in a market like today's, or do you just find like obviously there are unicorns and people who are just going to get hired regardless because they may have whatever it takes. But for a typical person, I mean, how important is that kind of flexibility?
I think it's pretty important. I think it's pretty important in this market, and I think it's important to be trying to think, 2 or 3 steps ahead, meaning 1 step back to get 2 steps forward, right? Like,
Hmm.
I'm willing to take a step back because this thing will round out my skill set in a way that's gonna be more competitive, or this thing gets me into an industry, that's growing. Right now, sometimes, Dave, it's like this thing gets me a paycheck.
Yeah.
It's that simple, right? But I think being able to think about in a market like today's, being able to think about how does this how does your next opportunity get you closer to the thing that's 2 steps away? versus it being like, this is my forever home.
Mhm.
And of course, if it is your forever place, awesome. Awesome. That's great. But I think you have to be willing to take a step back or to take a step that feels real sideways.
Right. This feels very natural to you
Mhm.
in terms of just how you've always thought and operated. Um, but is it something that you would have imagined yourself doing? I don't know, however many years ago? How long would you say when did you make the jump from sales to recruiting? How long ago?
10 years, 11, 10 or 11 years. Yeah.
Okay. Was it something you'd ever considered before, or was it really just like it happened, the opportunity arose and
Um, I hadn't thought about going into recruiting. I always loved I'd been a people leader for a long time. I'd led big teams and I loved that. So I loved hiring and I loved coaching and mentoring people. And so the idea of being able to do something that was connected to hiring in some way was something I just it was like that was a given for me that I was going to be involved in hiring in some way, whether it was
okay.
hiring a a team that reported to me or helping people hire other people. But the recruiting thing came yeah, I didn't imagine it. At the time, if I'm being really honest, I was running a big staffing agency and I was pretty burnt out. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go be a salesperson or maybe a recruiter to do an individual contributor role for a little while. And I just didn't realize how much I would love it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did you know anyone previously? Like, did you know people whose jobs that's what they did and they
Oh
were
yeah.
models?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I worked at a staffing agency, so, like, everybody I worked with was a recruiter for the
Okay.
most part, right? So and I mean, I made some of my best friends, to this day in that world, and I prior to that, I'd worked in college admissions and which is basically recruiting, and again, like, met the most wonderful people, so I knew a ton of people who were doing this work who really loved it, I the things that people didn't like were the same basically the same things I didn't love about sales, just like pressure and quotas and things like that. But the actual interacting with other humans and helping to make those matches, everyone I knew who did it loved it.
And it sounds like, I don't know, this sounds like it would be a relatively stable field to be in. I just spoke to someone earlier in the week whose entire industry is blown up and like the jobs that she literally has a PhD and it's I don't want to say useless, but it is considering the time and money that she invested,
Yeah.
she's really at a crossroads. And I think obviously with AI today, a lot of people are wondering whether their jobs are going to be around in 5, 10, 20 years. And I suppose there is vulnerability in almost any field in that regard, but, like, how do you feel about this as a field when you think about, you're not that old, you're gonna be working for a little while still?
Well, we're the same age, so
You're not that old.
I'll work as long yeah, I'll work as long as you work. So, I mean, there'll be disruption, right? Like, there's things that I mean, I use AI all the time now. There's things that robots can do that are great and super efficient, like, you know, just matching a resume and a job description. That can totally be done by AI, and I think that it's helpful to optimize those tools, and some recruiting roles will go away because of that, or teams won't need to hire quite as many people because of the technology. But you still have to, like, look someone in the eye and talk to them and understand, what are they motivated by and how do they show up when things are stressful and, how are these 2 human beings going to interact together in a reporting dynamic? And I think you need a person to do that, you know?
Right.
So I do think it's still, knock on wood, pretty stable. It's a very competitive industry. There's lots of recruiters out there. There's lots of third-party recruiters. So you have to really develop deep and trusted relationships with the people that you're working with, in order to stay busy. But I don't think that great recruiters, not that I'm a great recruiter, but I don't think that great recruiters are gonna lose their jobs to AI anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you personally have ambitions for where this is going for you in the next years?
Yeah, well, part of the reason I wanted to do it, and thought about sort of the individual contributor role, and, again, this was like 10, 11 years ago. Um, I wanted a job that was flexible from a location standpoint. I'm in Oregon, but my family's all on the East Coast, and my parents are getting older, and so I wanted something where I could work from anywhere, and I think recruiting has really served that purpose in many, many ways, like, it allows for that flexibility. And I've had my own business now for a little while, and it's gone well, which is great. I feel really lucky for that. So, as I keep going, I'm less, interested in how I do this and make more money, and more interested in the volume of people that I can help. Like, how can I help more people? And if that hopefully that makes me money in some way, but that's sort of my ambition now, is just kind of looking for ways to use technology and, the power of my own network that I've spent a long time building to help as many people as I can.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a story or an experience that stands out to you that was especially gratifying in that respect?
Um, for sure. I'm just trying to think of a more recent example. I met with this was months ago, probably a year ago. I met with a woman who, she's in San Diego, and she had spent most of her life working, with non-for-profits, and then, she was she did done a bunch of work with the Peace Corps, and at the time, it was, like, at the height of when everything was happening with Doge, and she was really scared, and everyone around her was losing her job, and she was, like, had to she felt like she was at this point where she had to make a shift and sort of get away from, like, the nonprofit government world, even though she loved the work so much, and we spent a long time talking about what could she do next, how are her skills marketable, like, how could she still do, work that felt meaningful and mission driven, and, I connected her with a handful of companies where I knew people that were doing mission driven work. I didn't know if they had jobs open, but this ranged from, like, consulting firms to ed tech firms, but that were outside of the public sector and outside of nonprofit, to just help her build her network. And so we met every couple weeks for a while, and, like, I don't she's not paying me to do this, but it was just fun. And again, would help her get connected to people at some of these organizations, and she wrote me, last month when she landed at one of the consulting firms that I introduced her to. And she said it's just like a complete change in her life, because she can still do wonderful work. It adds to the variety of work that she's doing. She's working with great people, and, like, fundamentally, she's not in fear of losing her job every day. Um,
Yeah.
so that was really cool. That was really cool. Yesterday, I mean, it's not the same, but I got a note yesterday from a gentleman who I talked to earlier this week. He's a program manager. He spent most of his career in healthcare. He's been out of work for 18 months. He's applied all over the place, talked to a million recruiters, and he just sent me a note that said, like, "Thanks for making me feel like a human." And that was awesome, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully I can help him get a job, but, like, sometimes there are these big, powerful stories of, like, this person made a career pivot and it's changed their life, and sometimes it's, like, things that are much smaller but still super important, like, I've been getting automated rejection emails for almost 2 years, and you made me feel like a real human being again, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that what has changed in the market? And I don't just necessarily mean the ups and downs of hiring or unemployment, but what in the time that you've been doing this, what kind of changes have you seen in the experience of the job seeker?
Oh, yeah, it's so much less personalized for the most part, you know? I mean, in some companies are still doing an amazing job of, um, creating a great candidate experience, and by that, I mean just, like, recognizing that someone has taken the time to apply and following up with them after they interview, sometimes even giving them meaningful feedback. That's extremely rare, but that still happens occasionally. But more and more these days, it's like for an applicant, it's like throwing your resume into the void and you just hear absolutely nothing. And lack of follow through and follow up can sometimes people can get pretty far along in a process, Dave, and then they just get completely ghosted. And I think that it's it's very natural to think like, "Oh, that means the recruiters are terrible," or, "They just don't care about people." It's not that, there's so much volume because of the tools that allow people to apply for thousands of jobs in a short period of time or just, like, click easy apply. These poor recruiters are overwhelmed with applicants.
Mhm.
99% of the time, I would bet they deeply want to get back to people. They're in the job because they care about people, but they just can't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it feels the experience is not great for the applicant, and it's not great for the recruiter, frankly, either. Yeah.
Yeah. What are the kinds of things that you think about or maybe talk about with peers all the time?
Um, well, recruiting is great, and it can be a grind. Like, you have to talk to a lot of
Yeah.
people, and that can be sort of exhausting at times. Um, Sometimes if you work for a third party recruiting company, like a placement agency or a consulting firm or something like that, um, it can be very salesy and it can be very competitive. And sometimes you don't get paid unless you are successful in filling the job. So there
Eh.
it's kind of a commission-based job in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Um, so there's some insecurity there. Um, you have to be able to tell people no, and that's no fun.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that happens.
Yeah.
But I do think, like, overarching, you get to help a lot of people, and you learn a ton. If you're internal with the company, you learn everything there is to learn about their business because you're working with all the hiring managers, and you know their pain points, excuse me, and you know how the company's growing, and you get deeply embedded in the business. If you're doing more third party recruiting like what I do, you get to learn about a bajillion different industries that you maybe wouldn't have learned about. Like, I
Yeah.
work with ad agencies, I work with DARPA. That's a pretty wide range, right? So
Right.
you can learn if you're someone who's curious and likes to learn, like, you do spend pretty much your whole day learning, whether it be learning about an individual when you're talking to them, learning about a company, learning about an industry, and that is super fun.
It's one of the things I like about doing what I do now is I mean,
Mhm.
I work with all these companies. I work with experts in such a wide range of fields, like water engineers and things that I have no personal knowledge in, except that now I've been working with water engineers for 13 years or something like
Right,
that. And
right.
I know so much mundane, wonky, and that's really interesting to me. And I bet it's interesting to you in your own kind of world.
Mhm.
Do you find in like I would imagine though that's not necessarily that interesting or appealing to a people. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just a type, right? You know?
I I think it's just a type, I think it's just a type and I don't know, I feel lucky that I am that type, but, like, for me, I was always one of those kids who I always did better in school when I was, like, also playing 2 sports and had some volunteer thing, like, if I wasn't, like if there wasn't a lot of variety, I
Mhm.
didn't do well at anything.
Oh,
You know? So, I think it can be for people who like to do, like, deeply focused work and go really, really deep into a certain subject area or industry, I think recruiting could be frustrating because you are kind of all over the place, right?
Right.
But for someone whose mind works that way and who is really stimulated by variety and newness, um, you know, there's no shortage of that in recruiting.
Right. How you doing?
Just like in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave, I'm stressed about everything that's happening in our country, but other than that, fine.
Sure.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Whew, yeah. There's
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But I'm good. We've got, my partner is a writer, and so it's been interesting, like you were talking about, sort of career security. It's been interesting to watch what's happening with him and like, I mean, I know so many amazing writers and copywriters, and they're getting just I mean, it's they're just getting decimated, right? So it's pretty brutal. And I don't know if you're finding I'm curious if you're finding this as well, but like a lot of people I know who are writers, graphic designers, people in the creative community are pretty impacted by what's happening with AI. And that's
mhm.
that makes my heart hurt because like deep in my soul, I am a just super fan of all things creative and people who create and make things.
Yeah. I mean, I see it and I don't. I think again, I've been really fortunate for a lot of reasons, but it's a small business, so we have a reasonable, modest sort of need for revenue. Like, I mean, we're not trying to make
Yeah,
millions of dollars every,
yeah.
and we serve a very focused customer base of nonprofits, foundations, and public agencies. So again,
Mhm.
that's um, it's probably worth pointing out that the government funding has been slashed, so that affects the public agencies. And
Right.
one of the repercussions that immediately follows that is that the money that the government has been giving to nonprofits, in many cases, has gone away. So yeah, it's there, and it's real. But we've been pretty fortunate, I think. For if I could sort of guess at a reason, I think it's just we've been doing this for 16 years. And so
Yeah.
it is the network. It is the body of work to some extent, but
Mhm.
also the familiarity with the landscape and the personnel and how things work and how we work. I mean, what I know now compared to what I knew, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when I was really just getting going, like it's night and day.
Yeah.
And so to try to do what we do without that background, I think would be
Yeah.
very, very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's but on the other hand, it's incredibly gratifying to get to hire those graphic designers,
Totally.
and videographers or web developers or whatever it might be, uh, to do the work on behalf of the client, and so that part about it is amazing. I love to be able to not just work with the teams, which is great in itself, but you know, to compensate people for their skills.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so it's it's a lot of things at once. It's
Mhm.
I what's your experience of sort of what's happening work-wise with people outside of your work vision of it? Like your personal work/recruiting. I'm assuming that your friends, even the very little I know about what that might look like, are represent a wider demographic of
Oh, yeah.
jobs and experiences,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how are they doing?
Um, I think they're doing okay overall. Um, it's interesting, like, everyone I know is being asked to do more with less.
Yeah.
Um And doesn't matter what industry they're in or what their job is. Like, I'm really thinking through, like, from friends who are in HR to friends who are engineers to like, everyone I know is being asked to do more with less. And so that's stressful, but at the same time, there's, like, a ton of gratitude for just for having a job. Like,
Right.
so many of us know so many people who are unemployed. that, like, for my friends who are still working, I think we're all just very grateful.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a crazy time.
Mm-hmm.
Work-Shaped Life is produced by the team at Sheepscott Creative. It's hosted by me, Dave Weich, edited by Bailey Cain and Michael Nipper, with production support from Benna Gottfried, Rosie Struve, Amelia Lukas, and Kate Sokoloff. Next time on Work-Shaped Life.
People will say that it's not true, but there is a divide when you show up to the play and you're wearing a nice outfit and you clearly just came from work and someone's sitting next to you with yoga pants. I'm clearly jealous of them. I mean, I am. Maybe I'm not clearly. I feel jealous that they just got to go to Pilates and roll into this, and I had to leave a meeting and race over to maybe make the second half of the play. But there's just this unspoken thing, and I'm sure they're just thinking I'm judging them. I don't know, but there is a divide.
Visit workshapelife.com to find every episode and say hello. Or even better, tell us a story about your own work-shaped life. Maybe we'll feature it on the podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to hear new episodes as they drop. We'll see you in 2 weeks with the next conversation. Thanks for listening.